President Biden is facing pressure to drop out of the race from the right and now the left. A top Washington Post columnist, David Ignatius, calling for President Biden to drop out of running for 2024. He did give a glowing review of the Biden presidency, adding that Biden was the right choice in 2020, but he cites some big concerns.
This combination of Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, and the polls show people feel uneasy about somebody who's 82 serving another 4-year term. The combination of that and people's uneasiness is reflected in polls about the vice president succeeding him. Time is running out. In another month, it's going to be too late to have this conversation. So I thought before it was locked in stone, it was worth at least raising.
Well, he had a lot to say. The New York Times with this headline: as Democratic jitters grow, Biden campaign tries to showcase his vigor. The Times says that with low approval ratings and shaky public performances, that's kind, the president and his team are planning an ad blitz and trying to reassure voters about his age. Again, it's not his age, it's his acuity. It's how he's doing. The president is bucking tradition with a massive $25 million ad buy, much earlier in the race than either of his recent predecessors. The two you see there and all the details. Power panel: Gianno Caldwell, Fox News political analyst; Marie Harf, Fox News contributor and former State Department spokesperson under President Obama. Gianno, a call from the left, from a name that might mean something among Democrats.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and I just got to be very honest, and I know if Maria is going to be honest with us, she would admit this as well. I don't think this is simply about his age. I don't think it's simply about his acuity. I think Democrats will run a blonde, dumb donkey if they could, if they believe they could win. I don't think that it makes much of a difference. I do think that there is this idea that's been seeping out within the Democratic Party and even in the mainstream media that Biden is corrupt. And I think this is the very polite way to push him out of the picture without actually having all of this allegations of bribery, allegations of alleged dealings with his son in China and all these other countries, money from oligarchs, emails, text messages, all of these things that we've seen, which we know that in any time if a Republican was accused of doing these things, Democrats would already be willing to impeach. Right now, no inquiry, they would be ready to impeach. So this has become, I think, an issue for the Biden campaign. I think this is why they want to run these campaign ads, because if you look at the polling, 44% of Americans believe that he's corrupt, and there's a lot of other negatives that Joe Biden has, but I think this is a very big one that's coming ahead.
All right. Before Marie even brings it up, some of my best friends are blondes, and they're brilliant, so we'll just start there.
No. I meant blind, not blonde.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
I also thought you said blonde. I also thought you said blonde.
I'm sorry.
No, not to make this about that, but adore many of them.
I apologize.
So,
Thank you for correcting me.
No, of course. And I do want to say this, Marie, because it's such an interesting point that Gianno is making. This could very easily be about things other than the obvious acuity, and as some people have really pointed to, his age. This really could be about the viability of a candidate who's up under an impeachment inquiry and has formed an impeachment war room inside the White House. Do you want that look when eventually you're hoping that the first black Indian president takes over, Kamala Harris? Because you know Democrats are thinking that he's going to be really old by the end of the potential second term. And that does matter.
You know, Harris, it's interesting. Elections, at the end of the day, are choices. They are not popularity contests in a vacuum. And I think the White House feels very confident that the record Joe Biden and his administration have developed in all of the bills they've gotten passed, the jobs they've helped create, this economic boom in many places that's coming back, they are very confident that if you put that record up, even with these other comments about age and acuity, all of that, when you put that up against who any of their challengers could be, are likely to be from the Republican Party, that they would rather be the Biden campaign than the Trump campaign, the DeSantis campaign. I think they will tell you that Biden's numbers are a floor, not a ceiling, and that we have seen that Donald Trump's numbers, if he's the nominee, right, he's the leading candidate, that his numbers are pretty close to their ceiling where we are now. There's a lot of people that will never vote for him. So when we get down to brass tacks and counting votes, The Biden team feels very comfortable with where they are.
Wow, that's really interesting. I'm going to ask
Democrats.
my team, just hold on one second. Can you come up with all the Republicans beating Biden from last week? And Nikki Haley in particular outside the margin of error. All right, they're working on it. I think we need to put the facts on the screen. And I appreciate you maybe looking at different polling, whatever. This was the one that every liberal network was leading with last week as well. And I want people to see this. If, in fact, he's hit the bottom, it's a really, really low number to hit the bottom for Biden. He's got a big climb out, and if you count numbers like the ones in the economy, Gianno, it could be the slipperiest, most fateful climb out ever.
And that's why I disagree with Maria saying that Democrats feel comfortable where they are when almost 70% of Democrats want to see a second choice. Those are horrible numbers when you think about the fact that consumer prices are up, gas up 60% since Biden took office. You look at the popularity that has crashed. I mean, even one of the selling points for Joe Biden in 2020 was the fact that he was an empathetic figure. Most Americans don't see him that way anymore. All the things that we were sold on Joe Biden, especially the independents and maybe some of the Republicans who may not have liked Trump, we're seeing that it wasn't really true. And now they're in a very serious situation. No one spends $25 million 15 months before an election to say that we're in a comfortable place. That just doesn't make sense.
And by the way, new numbers now from the Labor Bureau this morning. They show that inflation accelerated for a second straight month. It ticked up to 3.7% in August. Previously, it was 3.2%. That's half a percentage point in a month. Biden repeatedly insisting that his economic policies are only doing great things. Let's watch.
Bidenomics is just another way of saying restore the American dream.
And as you might have seen recently, further evidence of how well Bidenomics is working.
Thanks to Bidenomics, we are working our infrastructure and supply chains even stronger. Bidenomics is about making sure that we build an economy that doesn't leave anybody behind.
Bidenomics. Well, guess what? It's working.
Okay, so maybe he's whispering because it's not working and he thinks he can lie to us in a whisper. So look, census data showing the U.S. poverty level saw its lowest or largest one-year jump ever between 21 and 22, and from under 8 to more than 12%. The child poverty rate, and this is one that really jumped out at me, has more than doubled during that same time. Not only is he wrong, he's hurting people, particularly children, with his policies. Marie.
Well, he's actually passed legislation to help reduce child poverty, which most Republicans voted against. So we have to be honest about the facts here. You can find lots of facts and figures on both sides here. Wages are outpacing inflation. We have the lowest inflation rate among the G7.
Can we stay with the children for just a second, though? Because they can't get jobs. So the wages don't matter to the children who are now doubled numbers from what they were in poverty. And it is lipstick on a pig if you tell me that you want to blame Republicans and anybody else.
They vote against it, Harris.
But Biden.
They vote against legislation that helps children get out of poverty. That's just a fact. And so, look, I will agree, though, that there is still economic pain out there. And so the Biden team has as their job to make the case to the American people why these numbers that in many cases are good, not all, why they are better than what the alternative would be if Donald Trump is reelected, how they're investing in communities where people are seeing manufacturing jobs come back for the first time in a long time. They have to make that case, and they probably have to do it a little better, according to some of the polling.
All right, so you want to blame Republicans, say they didn't vote for a bill. QT, Q2 alone, nationwide credit card debt up $43 billion. So that really hurts, again, children in the home, because people are putting things like staples, like food and gas, on something that has a revolving credit and gets bigger every month because they can't pay off that card. Now, that is not something that's come to a vote. The president has to use his bully pulpit. Gianno, last word.
Yeah, and Marie's premise was Democrats couldn't be happier in the position that they're in when the party in and of itself, the numbers that we're looking at, the child poverty, hurts working class people. These are the people that Trump brought with him in 2016. We're talking about African Americans, Hispanic individuals, who now can't put groceries on the table in the same way that they used to back when the economy was actually good, Marie, and that's when Donald Trump was in office pre-COVID. So if we're going to talk about the facts, we have to be completely honest about it. Joe Biden has done a terrible job for Americans, and people are fed up with it.
Marie Harf, Gianno Caldwell, thank you. I'll bring you both back for Power Panel. Good to see you both.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.